Want to have a chat with Mickey's in the dungeon? Apply at contact@TierraMitica.com.
Hello friends of Dungeon Chats and newbies to our channel. This is like a short message for clarification. I'm very grateful to a participant that after they had their chat wrote us a letter and said some objections to the format of the Dungeon Chats. So I'm going to read it to you guys because it's very useful and I believe it needs some clarification. Number one, I think there needs to be a clear decision if the podcast is for Argonauts or listeners outside the community as well. If the goal is for the podcast to be accessible and shared to listeners outside the Argonaut community, as I believe is the intention in brackets, I think it needs more editing and some questions, situations need to be answered, definitely by Mickey's or cut out. Edit out the parts with uncomfortable, awkward moments. When people look to their notes for the next question, or Mickey's doesn't want to answer questions, or it's already been asked, people overpraise the workshop, and it looks like a stunt or any situation of the sort. Mickey's can't grill someone or use the same kind of language when someone is showing paradoxical behavior as he would if that person was in a workshop or a private call. So it just talks about how in my workshops people know how to expect because they go like slowly into it and we gain trust and understand my methods, which can be controversial. Let me give you two examples. On the episode with Gregory, which is the very first one, number one, which was awesome and had so many good bits about parenting and relationships, there's a moment where Mickey tells Greg, "You're wrong," 3 times in a row. For an outsider listening to a podcast, that's brutal to say to a guest in that way. Or in my episode, the whole "you're boring" moment and Mickey's physically turning away, acting uninterested, etc., which, yes, that might have been the case, and that's not the issue. I know what to take away from it, how to interpret it, and why he's doing that. But from an outside podcast perspective, without knowing Mickey's way, brackets, and without the built-in trust and context from a workshop, handling a guest on the show like that doesn't look good. And that kind of stuff could be the detriment of TierraMitica, giving people unfounded reasons to hate on Mickey's or the work, or seeming to give validity - proof to negative claims. And I'd really hate for that to impact TierraMitica or give more fuel to people who already don't get it. If Mickey's doesn't want to adjust how he speaks in the moment, which is fair, then those parts where he rips someone a new asshole should be edited out. In a workshop, it benefits the person and people around. In an uncontrollable public podcast, it looks bad. I know that might be annoying and Mickey's might say I don't care, but I'm just sharing my experience with podcasts and how this stuff lands in the outside world if this is really meant to reach non-Argonauts. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality. And then I would create a loose guidance for the questions. Analyze what types of questions get the clearest and most insightful answers from Mickey's and recommend those. It'll help keep the flow tight and bring out the best of what Mickey's has to offer, without it being limiting. I realize from my own experience doing it, but I would advise people to stay away from overly personal - specific to the person questions because there's not enough time to give enough context and details, and this format does not lend itself well to this type of questions, I feel, and would be better brought up in a Q&A or direct email to Mikis. 3. From a business and marketing perspective, I think it needs to be clear what the goal of this podcast is, who is serving, and who it is directed at. For example, is the person listening to this the same kind of person who would book a D&D retreat? By the way, we're in this beautiful citadel, this castle that we built, and we play role-playing games here every Saturday, the guys, so we mail bond. And we have a lot of fun, and we're also offering it for rental, and we organize RPG games in the jungle. It's a beautiful jungle out there. TierraMitica is a paradise, and these are some of the sculptures that surround our dungeon. So, to end this, I listen to a lot of podcasts. It is totally normal and expected to promote your stuff. Be smooth about it, but this content is inevitably going to make people curious about the work, so not explaining what it is or how to find it in the episode and in the show notes feels like a missed opportunity. It is natural that it's going to spark the interest of the people listening. Dungeon Chat's theme, I like it, but I think the link between the name, location, and the actual message structure of the podcast could be stronger. Common sense and magic is a great part that you've added, though. I would just bring it in more, really make it part of the identity, like ignite your time warrior kind of thing, or make a segment that relates to the theme. So thank you very much. And I truly appreciate these questions because they give me an opportunity to answer. To start with, the reason for the podcast is just to give people the opportunity and to have a chat and ask questions that they come up that they're curious about, and to get answers that are maybe some of them different from the norm, but very commonsensical in our opinion, and they work like magic. The reason we're doing it in the dungeon is because we want to promote these RPG games that we're trying to host here and to promote our work in sculpting, and we want some money because our workshops are designed to be economical enough for anybody to handle, and they're very intensive, so they're not a thing to actually be able to fully survive on. So yes, this part of it is commercial, plus it's fun. It's something different. It's a cool place to hold a podcast, like a nice stage. Life is about theater. Life is about living the video game, and the more convincing the stage is, the more fun it is. So yes, there's no other incentives for this. But the podcast is about being able to flow, to not care who listens. So here I will explain that the Argonauts that are being referred are people that have attended my workshops, namely the Choice OS Mythic Voyage, which is like a self-programming kind of course about people to program themselves through their beliefs, an operating system for humans, as we call it, based on choice, free choice, for the singular purpose of happiness. So it's, we believe, the most heavy-duty self-change workshop in the world, but this podcast is not about this. So in the initial podcast with Gregory, number 1, and we've done many since, I begged him before the workshop to not mention anything that is specific to the workshop, to ask questions that are not just for Argonauts, people who have taken one of my workshops. So he did the opposite. And then it felt wrong, but I didn't want to impose anything on anybody. How many times can you say something? And when people talk about the workshop and advertise the workshop, I tell them to not talk about the workshop. And there's, in many podcasts, you can find that. But the point is that I decided very fast that A, I should not tell people what to ask and not to ask, because eventually they'll exhaust these kind of questions and there'll be less of them. And I would let things take their natural form. The podcast is for everybody. And the thing is, my manner is different because I use whatever kind of energy will work at the moment. So I can insult a person, I can tell them I'm bored if they're repeating the same thing again and again, just to give a very big symbolic information that they're just repeating themselves. I can do all kinds of things. I can tell them they're wrong if they start on a wrong premise, because then, you know, if the premise you begin on is wrong, then every other assumption you make is wrong. So if I don't react to that, I'm not being real. For example, if you believe that everybody in the world wants to destroy you, then of course you'll interpret everything according to this belief. So, yes, this podcast is for everybody. And Argonauts know things and also are more familiar to my manner of being like a chameleon and changing from like a humorous guy to kind of like very intense guy or very emotional guy or things like that, because I like to live the situations that I'm confronting. So there's many podcasts, as you said, out there. There's no point in doing something if it doesn't have something different. And what we do in our podcast is we edit nothing. The only edits there is because there's a technical problem or there's a very big pause, and these are very rare. So one time the whole microphones went out, so we had to stop 2 or 3 times. We edited that out, or things like that. Sometimes somebody needs a pee break, so we edit that out. But we edit nothing else out, including the pauses. So all the questions are fully there, all the answers are fully there. When I don't want to answer is just because something requires a lot of background to answer, but I answer most things. And everything I don't answer, I still give some kind of answer that clarifies the subject. But if it's a long subject, if you tell me, talk about the biology of a turtle, I'm going to tell you, this is not the venue for all of that. Ask me something specific about the biology of the turtle. I cannot tell you something that takes a year in 10 minutes. So, yes, this podcast is different, it's directed at everybody. And if people are offended, then they don't have to watch it. I don't care about the reputation of TierraMitica, because those that have completed my workshops without quitting, they only have good things to say. And those that have not attended or have quit have bad things to say, and that's okay. Like, I go to great restaurants and there's always some bad reviews about them. The point is, what is most of the people say, or the rest of the people say. As far as concerns the RPG games and the D&D games that were holding activities, nobody coming here for something like this has any exposure to me. The last one we had, I never even saw the people. So it's irrelevant what I believe or whether I'm an asshole or not to people wanting to rent a nice place and have a nice event. That's totally irrelevant. The opinions of the guy who owns Hilton Hotel doesn't mean that you cannot enjoy a nice Hilton Hotel stay somewhere where the hotel is a good price and a beautiful location and you like to go there. It is irrelevant. You're never going to meet them. The thing is, I don't want to edit anybody. Of course, people should not ask completely personal questions in a podcast. And on such occasions, I try to answer them, but also stop them and say that, you know, this is getting too personal. People need to know a lot of backstory. And I try my best, but there's a certain limit. I believe people should be free in this podcast to ask anything they like. And if they ask a very personal question, and the answer is something that they would like to keep personal, then, I mean, that's their choice. If they want to keep something personal, don't ask it. So it's up to you. Total freedom, total choice, 100%. Answers that are not restricted, either by propriety or how they're going to look or what effect they're going to have to anybody else other than the person asking them. Yes? And total freedom in any kind of question, on any subject. If somebody chooses something personal, then I can't help that. I'm going to answer to the best of my ability. And if that requires to make fun of them because they're telling me something that they should realize is ridiculous, then I'm going to make fun of them because that's the truth. That's how other people perceive this kind of attitude. And then, what am I? Somebody who pretends that this doesn't exist? Somebody who pretends that if somebody is, for example, needy and trying to oppress their husband or something, that this doesn't exist? It does exist. Yeah? So then I'm going to tell them that this is oppressive or boring or repetitive because that's what they do in their life and alienate people in their life. My objective here is to answer sincerely from the heart and how I would answer to my best friend. If people don't like that, they don't have to watch this because we don't depend either monetarily or in any other way on this podcast. This is a fun thing to do, to just answer people's questions in a commonsensical, magical, intuitive way, in a way that a 5-year-old can understand it. It's not a marketing tool, so we really, really, really don't care. For people who enjoy it, they'll understand. Those who don't, maybe they won't, but maybe they will appreciate the fact that nothing is edited out. Not a single thing, not a mistake, not a wrong step, not anything. Thank you all very much. If you like to keep watching them, I hope this clarifies things from us in the jungle, in the place of magic.
Want to play RPG in our dungeon? Would you like us to make you a small, medium, or huge custom-made sculpture? Or even your own castle? Contact us at contact@fantasyscaping.com.